A swarm of insectoid nightmares ripped the human outpost apart. Barbed claws shredded flesh, as compound eyes reflected the fire and death. Only the most battle-hardened humans could stop this murderous new species. Logan Webb's eyes snapped open as the emergency alert blared in his Spartan quarters. The wrinkled sheets twisted around his muscular body as he jumped up and slammed a fist on the flashing console. A human colony had gone dark, his expression resolute as years of Xeno training kicked in. These silent outposts always meant trouble, but never like this. Webb slid into his armored tactical suit, clips snapping and servos whirring. His rough hands expertly checked the plasma rifle before grabbing his Xeno kit. The metal door slid open with a hiss. Webb jogged down the hallway, heavy boots clanging. In the hangar, his squad prepped the dropship, faces grim and scarred. Thad, his demolitions expert. Zhang, the siege specialist. Bauer, their ranger and tracker. These battle-forged warriors had seen it all. But not this, never this. The ship's engines roared as it knifed through the night sky. Red lights flashed in the hold. The team triple-checked weapons and armor. A tense silence, broken only by mechanical clicks and the distant thrumming of the engines. The outpost appeared on the monitors. Webb's blood ran cold, not an outpost anymore, a smoking ruin. Walls crumbled, buildings gutted, corpses everywhere. And there, squatting obscenely, an immense alien craft, spiky and cruel like a crouching insect. The ship lurched and the rear hatch yawned open. Wind roared. Webb had to shout, "Fan out, search for survivors!" The ruins reeked of char and death as they moved in formation, decades of training guiding them. Webb approached the looming alien ship, a colossus of spines and strange metal. This was first contact, but not like the vids, not a message of peace. A hiss. Webb froze as a dripping hatch cracked open, and there it was, emerging into the red light. 7 feet of barbed legs and twitching mandibles, segmented eyes reflecting the burning ruins, jagged scythe arms glistening. The creature shrieked, an awful piercing wail, then charged forward, claws extended faster than anything its size should move. Webb rolled to the side as a claw scythed past his head. He brought up the rifle and squeezed the trigger. The plasma bolt slammed into its torso. The monster barely slowed. More shrieks split the air as a swarm of creatures skittered from the ship. Plasma fire lit the night as his team opened up. But the insectoid things shrugged off the bolts and kept coming, claws hungry for human blood. Webb gritted his teeth as he fired again. It was going to be a long night. And if he and his team failed here, these nightmares would swarm across the human colonies, an unstoppable tide of fangs and death. The fate of humanity rested on this battle. They could not fail, would not fail. These monsters would learn the fury of the human race. Webb's team unleashed a hail of plasma bolts at the charging Cardassians. The creatures' tough exoskeletons deflected some shots, but concentrated fire brought a few down. Webb recognized these insectoid horrors from deep space recon reports. Cardassians. Merciless. Relentless. "Aim for the head," Webb barked, noticing a shot to a compound eye dropped one instantly. The humans fought with grim discipline. Years of training their only edge against the aliens' raw ferocity and numbers. Plasma fire, screeches and human screams filled the air. Suddenly the firefight halted as a massive silhouette emerged from the ship. A Cardassian warrior twice the size of the others. In its claws, a strange weapon glowed with malevolent energy. The behemoth aimed and fired. A lance of searing light speared Thad, Webb's demo expert. He vanished in a flash of atoms, not even dust remaining. "No!" Webb roared. The warrior had to die now or they were finished. "Concentrated fire on Big Ugly. Pin it down!" His remaining soldiers unloaded everything they had at the giant Cardassian. Most shots scorched uselessly off thick armor, but a few found weak points, staggering it. Webb sprinted to flank the monster. It swept its energy weapon in an arc, vaporizing Zhang and Bauer in an instant. Webb's teeth clenched. This ended here. He sighted on a twitching compound eye and fired. The plasma bolt struck true. The eye burst in a spray of ichor, and the titanic creature toppled, its skull a smoking ruin. The death of their champion seemed to break the Cardassians. They skittered back to their ship in a frenzy. The hatch slammed shut with a reverberating clang. Webb exhaled raggedly, adrenaline still surging. But even as the immediate threat withdrew, a chill of grim realization sank in. This was no isolated incident. This was an invasion. Humanity itself was at war. He raised his comm unit. "Command, this is Captain Webb. We have a full-scale incursion. Insectoid hostiles designated Cardassians. Extremely dangerous, armed with advanced weapons. We need to mobilize everything we've got." As Webb signed off, he spotted a Cardassian with distinct markings on its carapace, seeming to direct the others. A leader, perhaps even a queen. He narrowed his eyes. That one would be a priority target. To stop this invasion, they had to cut the head off the snake. But for now, all he could do was stay alive, regroup any other survivors and prepare for the long, bloody war ahead. As the dropship lifted off from the ruined outpost, Webb slumped against the bulkhead, exhaustion seeping into his bones. The adrenaline of battle faded, replaced by a hollow ache for his fallen comrades. But there was no time to grieve, not with an invasion underway. Reinforcements arrived to secure the area and gather intel. Webb was quickly whisked away to an emergency briefing at Human Alliance HQ on Arcadia Prime. The gleaming towers of the capital seemed to mock the grim faces of the officers gathered in the briefing room. Admiral Grayson, a battle-scarred veteran of countless campaigns, stood at the podium, his steel-grey eyes scanning the room. "The Cardassians have hit a dozen colonies simultaneously. Our defenses were overwhelmed in hours." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Webb leaned forward, a cold knot in his gut. Grayson raised a hand for silence. "This enemy is not new to us. The Cardassians once controlled a vast empire spanning a quarter of the galaxy. We thought they went extinct millennia ago after a war with the Protheans, but it seems they've been hiding, building their strength in the shadows." A hologram flickered to life, displaying a Cardassian warrior with ornate markings on its carapace. Webb sucked in a breath. It was the same one he had seen at the outpost, directing the attack. "This is the Solaris, their supreme commander, a powerful psychic who can coordinate their forces with terrifying precision." Grayson's face was grim. "As long as the Solaris lives, we don't stand a chance." Webb stood, drawing all eyes. "Sir, I volunteer for any mission to take out this Solaris." Grayson nodded. "I was hoping you'd say that, Captain. We need our best on this. You'll lead a strike team to infiltrate their command ship and eliminate the Solaris. It's a long shot, but it might buy us some time to regroup." Webb saluted. "We won't fail, Admiral." As the briefing ended and officers dispersed to their duties, Webb gathered his new team for the mission. They were the best of the best, hardened veterans with a glint of steel in their eyes. But as Webb looked out at the stars, he couldn't shake the feeling that even their skills might not be enough against this ancient, implacable foe. The Cardassians had returned from the depths of history to settle an old score, and humanity was in their crosshairs. The battle for survival had begun, and Webb would be on the front lines, staring down the barrel of extinction. It was time to gear up and face the oncoming storm. Webb pored over dossiers and personnel files, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He had to choose the right team for this mission. There could be no weak links, no hesitation. Every soldier had to be the best of the best. He tapped a few files, transferring them to the selected column. Sergeant Mira Voss, a peerless sniper. Corporal Zhen Liu, an infiltration expert. And, of course, his old friend, Dr. Ethan Reeves, the brilliant xenobiologist. Reeves walked into the room, his normally cheerful face creased with worry. "Logan, I need to show you something. It's about the Cardassians." Webb looked up, noting the urgency in his friend's voice. "What is it, Ethan?" Reeves brought up a holographic display of a Cardassian's internal anatomy. He zoomed in on a pulsating, multi-chambered organ. This is what allows them to adapt so quickly to different environments. It's also why they're so damn hard to kill. This organ can regenerate their tissues at an astonishing rate. Webb frowned. So what's the good news? The good news, Reeves said, is that it has a weakness. A specific frequency of sound waves can cause it to overload and shut down. It would essentially paralyze them. A glimmer of hope sparked in Webb's chest. Can we weaponize that? Theoretically, yes, but I need a live sample of the organ to study to get the frequency just right. Webb nodded grimly. Then that's our first objective. We infiltrate a Cardassian supply base, get you that sample. The team assembled in the hangar, checking weapons and gear. Webb briefed them on the mission, his voice steady despite the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. They boarded a stealth shuttle, slipping past Cardassian defenses and landing silently near the base. The team moved like ghosts, dispatching sentries with ruthless efficiency. They found the base's medical center, where Reeves quickly located a suitable specimen. But as they prepared to exfiltrate, alarms blared to life. They had been discovered. Plasma bolts filled the air as the team fought their way back to the shuttle. Webb saw Lou go down, a smoking hole in his chest. Then Voss, her sniper rifle clattering to the ground. Webb took a hit to the shoulder, spinning him around. He gritted his teeth against the pain and kept firing, covering Reeves as he sprinted to the shuttle with the precious sample. They barely made it out, the shuttle's hull scorched by enemy fire. Webb slumped in his seat, his vision blurring. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Reeves's face, etched with worry. He woke in the medbay, his shoulder bandaged. Reeves was there, his face grim. "Logan, we've got a problem. The Cardassians have launched an all-out assault on New Terra. Millions of civilians are at risk." Webb struggled to sit up, wincing at the pain. "The fleet." "Outnumbered and outgunned. They're not sure how long they can hold out." Webb closed his eyes for a moment, the faces of the fallen flashing before him. Liu, Voss, so many others. No more. This had to end. He had to end it. "The mission is a go. We're taking out the Solaris now." Reeves nodded, a glint of steel in his eyes. "I'll keep working on the frequency weapon. You just focus on putting a plasma bolt through that bug-eyed bastard's skull." Webb managed a tight smile. "That's the plan." He swung his legs off the bed, ignoring the medic's protests. There was no time for rest, no time for healing. The Cardassians had to be stopped, and Webb would stop them, even if it was the last thing he ever did. Webb gritted his teeth as he strapped on his armor, the pain from his wounds a dull throb beneath the adrenaline. Reeves handed him the prototype sonic rifle, his face lined with concern. "You sure you're up for this, Logan?" Webb nodded grimly. "No choice, we're out of time." The infiltration team boarded the captured Cardassian transport, their expressions hardened with perseverance. As they approached the command ship, Webb's mind raced with strategies and contingencies. The transport docked with a shudder. The moment the airlock hissed open, plasma bolts filled the corridor. Webb and his team dived for cover, returning fire. "They knew we were coming," Sergeant Kovac shouted over the din of battle. Webb cursed under his breath. The Solaris, it had to be tracking their thoughts. He made a split-second decision. "Split up, plant the charges, we need to create a diversion." The team broke into 3 units, each racing down a different corridor. Webb led the charge towards the command deck, sonic rifle at the ready. But every corner, every junction, Cardassian warriors were waiting. Their movements were too precise, too coordinated. The Solaris was guiding them like pieces on a chessboard. Explosions suddenly rocked the ship, the deck pitching beneath their feet. The other teams had planted their charges, alarms blared, and Cardassians scrambled to contain the damage. Webb pressed forward, battling through the chaos. At last he reached the command chamber. He blasted the door open with a plasma charge and stormed in, rifle leveled. The Solaris stood at the center of the room, a towering insectoid form dripping with bladed limbs. Its compound eyes glittered with malevolent intelligence. Webb fired. a concentrated pulse of sonic energy. But to his horror, the sound waves seemed to bend around the Solaris, its exoskeleton shifting and adapting. The creature let out a resonant clicking that might have been laughter. "Foolish human," it said, its voice a grating buzz. "We have studied your kind for decades. We know your every weakness." It stalked forward, a cruel light in its eyes. "The Cardassians are the superior species. We are destined to rule this galaxy. And you? You are nothing more than an insect to be crushed beneath our heel." Webb felt a pressure building in his skull, a searing pain. The Solaris was attacking his mind, trying to rip it apart with psychic force. Through the haze of agony, Webb saw something glinting on the creature's forehead, a neural implant pulsing with energy, the source of its power. With a roar of desperation, Webb lunged forward, grabbing the implant. The Solaris screeched, raking at him with its claws, but Webb held on with steadfast perseverance, his fingers scrabbling for purchase. With a brutal yank, the implant came free in a spray of ichor. The Solaris howled, staggering back. Its psychic assault faltered. Webb raised his rifle and fired point-blank into the creature's exposed brain. The sonic pulse liquefied the Solaris's head in a burst of gore. As the Supreme Commander's corpse toppled, Webb sagged to his knees, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The neural implant fell from his blood-slicked fingers, still pulsing faintly. He could hear the sounds of battle raging throughout the ship, the chatter of gunfire and the shrieks of the dying. The Solaris was dead, but the fight was nowhere near the end. Webb pushed himself to his feet, grimacing at the pain from his wounds. He scooped up the implant and secured it in a containment pouch. Reeves would need to study it to understand the extent of the Cardassian psychic abilities. But that was a problem for later. Right now he had a ship to secure and a team to extract. He reloaded his rifle and stepped out into the smoke-filled corridor, ready to face whatever came next. The Cardassians would learn the true strength of human commitment today, and Webb would make damn sure they never forgot it. With the Solaris dead, the Cardassian warriors faltered, their movements erratic and uncoordinated, the psychic web that had guided their every action unraveled, leaving them in disarray. On the bridge of the human flagship, Admiral Grayson watched the tactical display with a grim smile. "All ships, engage the enemy. Hit them with everything we've got." The human fleet surged forward, plasma cannons blazing. The Cardassian ships, once an impenetrable swarm, scattered like leaves before a hurricane. Explosions blossomed in the void as the human weapons found their marks. Webb and his team raced through the disintegrating corridors of the Cardassian command ship, dodging falling debris and gouts of flame. The ship shuddered and groaned, its hull breached in a dozen places. "Move, move, move!" Webb shouted, herding his soldiers toward the hangar bay. They leaped into a Cardassian transport, Reeves scrambling to the controls. The ship lurched drunkenly as he coaxed it into the air, narrowly avoiding a cascade of sparks and shrapnel. As they blasted out of the hangar, the command ship exploded behind them, a miniature sun blooming in the darkness. The shockwave buffeted their tiny craft, nearly sending it careening out of control. Webb sagged back in his seat, his heart pounding. Through the viewport he watched the human fleet tear into the Cardassian forces, the tide of battle turning before his eyes. But even as relief washed over him, a chill crept up his spine. This victory had come at a steep price, and somehow he knew it was only the beginning. Hours later, as the last of the Cardassian ships limped away in retreat, Webb stood before Admiral Grayson in the flagship's briefing room. His body ached with exhaustion, and his mind reeled from the horrors he had witnessed. Grayson leaned forward, his face lined with weariness. "You did well, Captain. The Solaris is dead and the Cardassian offensive has been blunted, but I fear our troubles are just getting started." As if on cue, the briefing room's view screen flickered to life. A Cardassian stared back at them, its chitin gleaming under the harsh light. But there was something different about this one. Its eyes glittered with a malevolent intelligence that made Webb's skin crawl. "Humans," it hissed, its voice dripping with venom. "You have struck a blow against us, but your victory is fleeting." I am the new Solaris, and I vow to finish what my predecessor started. Your species will be wiped from the face of the galaxy, your worlds reduced to ashes." The screen went dark, leaving a stunned silence in its wake, Grayson's fists tight. "It seems our enemy is not so easily defeated. They've already chosen a new leader." Webb's mind raced. The Cardassians were relentless. As long as even one of them remained, humanity would never be safe. They had to be stopped at the source. "Sir," he said, an idea forming, "we need to take the fight to them. A preemptive strike on their homeworld. Cut off the head and the body will die." Grayson nodded slowly. "A bold plan, Captain. Risky, but it may be our only chance." He brought up a holographic display of a planet, its surface a mottled brown and green. "This is the Cardassian homeworld, heavily defended, and we know next to nothing about its layout or defenses." Webb stepped forward, his eyes hard. "Then we need intel. Let me lead a covert mission to the surface. We'll scout out their key military installations, gather data for the attack." Grayson considered for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. Assemble your team, but remember, Captain, if you're caught, we'll deny any knowledge of your mission. You'll be on your own." As the briefing ended and Webb strode out to prepare, Reeves fell into step beside him. "Logan, I know that look. What's on your mind?" Webb's brow furrowed. "Something doesn't add up, Ethan. The Cardassians, their single-minded focus on wiping us out. It feels like there's more to this war than just a clash of species." Reeves frowned. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," Webb admitted. "Call it a hunch, but I intend to find out." As they walked through the bustling corridors of the flagship, a sense of unease settled over Webb. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were all just pawns in a much larger game, and the true enemy, the one pulling the strings, was still out there, waiting to make its move. Webb's heart pounded as the stealth shuttle descended through the turbulent atmosphere of the Cardassian homeworld. Toxic yellow clouds swirled past the viewports, lightning flickering in their depths. Reeves hunched over the controls, his brow furrowed in concentration, as he navigated the treacherous winds. "There," Webb said, pointing to a jagged mountain range on the scanner. "The intel suggests their primary command bunker is located beneath that ridge." Reeves nodded, angling the shuttle towards a narrow ravine. As they drew closer, Webb could make out the telltale signs of Cardassian architecture, angular, organic structures that seemed to grow from the rock itself. The shuttle touched down on a narrow ledge, the team moving with practiced efficiency to gather their gear. Webb checked his sonic rifle, the weapon feeling heavy in his hands. They made their way into the mountain, following a twisting path that led deep underground. The air grew thick and humid, the walls pulsing with a sickly bioluminescence. "I don't like this," Sergeant Voss muttered, her eyes scanning the shadows. "It's too quiet." Webb silently agreed. The Cardassians should have detected their approach by now. Something was wrong. As they rounded a corner, they found themselves in a vast cavern, its walls covered in intricate carvings and glowing glyphs. Reeves stopped short, his eyes widening. "My God," he breathed, "these they're not Cardassian, they're far older." He ran his fingers over the symbols, his mind racing. I think this is evidence of an ancient civilization, one that predates the Cardassians by millions of years." Webb frowned. "What are you saying, Ethan?" "I'm saying that the Cardassians may not be the original inhabitants of this world. They may have been created by this ancient species, engineered for war and conquest." A chill ran down Webb's spine. If Reeves was right, then they were facing an enemy far more ancient and powerful than they had ever imagined. They pressed on, delving deeper into the mountain. With each step, the sense of unease grew. The carvings on the walls became more disturbing, depicting scenes of violence and subjugation. "Here," Reeves said, pointing to a particular glyph. "This symbol keeps repeating. It translates to Overlord. I think it refers to some kind of controlling entity." Webb's mind raced. Could this overlord be the true power behind the Cardassians? A remnant of the ancient species that had created them? Suddenly, a hail of plasma bolts erupted from the darkness. Webb dove for cover, his team scattering. He caught a glimpse of chitinous armor and glowing eyes. "Ambush!" he yelled, firing his sonic rifle into the fray. The Cardassians pressed their attack, their movements perfectly coordinated. At their head strode a towering figure, its exoskeleton adorned with intricate markings. The new Solaris. Webb gritted his teeth, pouring fire into the advancing warriors, but for every Cardassian that fell, two more seemed to take its place. A scream tore through the chaos. Webb turned to see Reeves falling, a smoking hole in his chest. "Ethan!" Webb roared, lunging towards his friend. But a wall of Cardassians blocked his path, their claws slashing. Webb knew they were outmatched. They had to retreat, regroup. He barked orders to his team, laying down covering fire as they fell back. As they raced through the tunnels, the Solaris' mocking laughter echoed in their ears. "Flee, little humans," it hissed. "Flee before the might of the Cardassian Empire." Webb's mind raced as they burst out into the toxic air of the planet's surface. They couldn't beat the Cardassians. Not like this. They needed a new plan. And then it hit him. A desperate, insane plan, but it was their only chance. He turned to his team, his eyes hard. "Get back to the shuttle. Reeves needs medical attention, and the fleet needs the intel we've gathered." Voss frowned. "What about you, sir?" Webb looked back at the mountain, his eyes sharp. "I'm going to buy you some time, and I'm going to end this once and for all." He checked his rifle, then his demo charges, enough to bring the whole mountain down, and bury the Solaris and the Overlord with it. His team protested, but Webb silenced them with a look. "That's an order. Now go and tell my wife I love her." As his soldiers retreated to the shuttle, Webb turned and strode back into the mountain, a steadfast perseverance settling over him. One way or another, this ended today. The fate of humanity rested on his shoulders, and he would not fail them, not now, not ever. Webb's heart pounded as he raced through the winding tunnels of the Cardassian command bunker. The air grew thick with the stench of ozone and the pulsing hum of alien machinery. He gripped his sonic rifle tightly, his eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. As he rounded a corner, he found himself in a vast chamber, its walls pulsing with an eerie, sickly light. And there, at the center, was the Solaris, its chitinous form towering over a seething mass of energy that could only be the Overlord. "Welcome, Captain Webb," the Solaris hissed, its mandibles clicking. "You've come far, but your journey ends here." Webb leveled his rifle at the creature. "It ends for both of us." The Solaris laughed, a grating, buzzing sound that echoed through the chamber. "You still don't understand, do you? The Overlord has seen every possibility, every outcome. Your species' extinction is inevitable." The energy mass pulsed and swirled, tendrils of light snaking out to caress the Solaris's exoskeleton. Webb watched in horrified fascination as the Solaris began to speak, its voice now resonant and multi-layered. "We are the last remnant of the Protheans, the species that once ruled the galaxy," the Overlord spoke through its puppet. "When our empire fell, our greatest minds sacrificed their physical forms to create me, an eternal guardian, to guide the lesser races we left behind." Webb's mind raced. The Protheans. The name was familiar from ancient xenoarchaeological records, a mythical species lost to time. But this was beyond anything he could have imagined. "The Cardassians are our instrument," the Overlord continued. "Through them we will reclaim our rightful place as masters of the galaxy. Your species is but an insect to be crushed underfoot." Webb's mind focused. "We'll see about that." He fired his sonic rifle, the pulse of sound waves slamming into the Solaris. But the creature merely staggered, its form shimmering as the Overlord's energy field absorbed the blast. "Foolish human," the Solaris snarled. "You cannot harm me while the Overlord lives." And then it clicked. The Overlord's power, its connection to the planet itself, that was the key. Webb reached for his belt, his fingers closing around the cold metal of the demo charges. It was a desperate plan, but it was all he had left. The chamber shook as the first bombardment from the human fleet struck the planet's surface. Dust rained from the ceiling and cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. Webb lunged forward, rolling under a swipe of the Solaris's claws. He slapped the charges onto the pulsing tendrils of the Overlord's energy mass, priming them with shaking fingers. The Solaris screeched in rage, lashing out with a psychic blast that sent Webb flying. He crashed into the wall, his vision swimming. Through the haze of pain, he saw the Solaris advancing, its claws raised for the killing blow. Webb fumbled for the detonator, his thumb hovering over the trigger. "For Earth," he whispered, and pressed the button. The world went white. A roaring filled his ears as the charges detonated, the explosion consuming the Overlord's energy mass in a blinding flash. The Solaris screamed, a sound of pure agony and despair. It staggered, its exoskeleton cracking and splintering as its connection to the Overlord was severed. Webb struggled to his feet, his body battered and broken. He stared at the Solaris, watching as the light faded from its compound eyes. "It's over," he rasped. "Your masters are gone. Your purpose is ended." The Solaris twitched, its mandibles working soundlessly. Then, with a final shudder, it collapsed, its lifeless form crashing to the chamber floor. Webb sagged against the wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The chamber shook again, larger chunks of debris raining down as the bombardment intensified. He knew he should move, should try to find a way out, but his body wouldn't cooperate, his limbs heavy and unresponsive. As his vision began to darken at the edges, Webb's thoughts turned to his team, to the fleet, to the countless lives he had fought to protect. He could only hope that his sacrifice had been enough, that the Cardassian threat had been ended once and for all. The last thing he saw before the darkness claimed him was a bright light, a searing brilliance that seemed to fill the chamber, and then nothingness. Dust and smoke swirled through the ruins of the command bunker as Webb dragged himself from the rubble. His body screamed in pain, blood seeping from a dozen wounds, but he was alive. Against all odds, he had survived. The ground shook as the human fleet's bombardment intensified, the very air vibrating with the force of the explosions. Webb stumbled through the debris, his vision blurring, his lungs burning with each ragged breath. A sudden movement caught his eye. He tensed, raising his rifle with trembling hands. But it wasn't a Cardassian that emerged from the shadows. It was a squad of human soldiers, their armor scorched and dented, their faces haggard but determined. "Captain Webb," the lead soldier called out, lowering his weapon. "We're here to get you out, sir." Webb nearly collapsed with relief. He allowed the soldiers to support him as they picked their way through the ruins, the sound of distant firefights echoing through the tunnels. As they emerged onto the planet's surface, Webb blinked in the harsh light. The once mighty Cardassian cities lay in ruins, the ground littered with the broken bodies of warriors and smashed war machines. Everywhere, human soldiers were mopping up the remaining pockets of resistance. Many Cardassians, their psychic link to the Solaris severed, simply dropped their weapons and raised their hands in surrender. Others fought to the last, their compound eyes blazing with futile defiance as they were cut down by plasma fire. A medic rushed over to Webb, quickly assessing his injuries. As she applied field dressings and injected him with painkillers, Webb grabbed her arm. "The invasion," he rasped. "What's happening?" The medic managed a tired smile. "We've done it, sir. The Cardassian forces are in full retreat. Our colonies are safe. It's over." Webb closed his eyes, a wave of exhaustion and relief washing over him. But even as the medic's words sank in, he felt a twinge of unease. Yes, the immediate threat had been neutralized, but at what cost? How many brave soldiers and innocent civilians had lost their lives in this brutal war? And what of the Overlord? Had they truly destroyed it, or had they merely dealt it a temporary setback? These questions caused great concern on Webb's mind as he was loaded onto a transport ship and whisked away to a medical facility. There would be time to ponder the future later. For now, he needed to heal, to come to terms with all that had happened. In the days and weeks that followed, as Webb recuperated from his injuries, the full scope of the human victory became clear. The Cardassian invasion had been repelled on all fronts, their once mighty war machine reduced to ruins. The human alliance hailed Webb as a hero, the man who had struck the decisive blow against the Solaris and the Overlord. But Webb knew that the true credit belonged to the countless soldiers and civilians who had fought and died to defend their species. As soon as he was able, Webb threw himself into the task of unraveling the mysteries of the Cardassian civilization. Together with Reeves and a team of scientists and xenobiologists, he delved into the ruins of the Cardassian cities, searching for clues about the ancient race that had created them and the Overlord that had guided them. What they found sent a chill down Webb's spine. Deep within the planet's crust, hidden beneath layers of rock and metal, they discovered evidence of other energy masses similar to the Overlord, dormant, but still very much alive. Webb stared at the pulsating masses, a grim realization settling over him. The Overlord had not been unique. There were others like it, perhaps dozens, or even hundreds, scattered throughout the galaxy. And if one of them had been able to guide the Cardassians to such heights of power and aggression, what might the others be capable of? As he stood there, bathed in the eerie glow of the slumbering entities, Webb knew that humanity's struggle was far from finished. They had won a great victory, yes. But the war, the true war, was only just beginning. The Overlord might be gone, but its legacy and the threat of its kind would linger for generations to come. Humanity would need to be vigilant, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. For now, though, there was still work to be done. The Cardassian homeworld needed to be secured, the remaining warriors rooted out and dealt with, and the secrets of the Overlord and its brethren needed to be unlocked, their mysteries unraveled. Webb squared his shoulders, ignoring the twinge of pain from his still healing wounds. He had a feeling that he was going to be busy for a long, long time. As he turned to leave the chamber, Reeves fell into step beside him. The xenobiologist's face was drawn, his eyes haunted by the things they had seen. "What do we do now?" Reeves asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Webb's teeth gritted. "We keep fighting," he said. "We learn, we adapt, and we make damn sure that nothing like the Cardassians ever threatens humanity again." Reeves nodded, a glint of tenacity in his eyes. "I'm with you, Logan, to the end." Webb clasped his friend's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity and shared purpose. Together they walked out of the chamber and back into the harsh light of the Cardassian homeworld. There was still a long road ahead, a road filled with danger and uncertainty, but for the first time in a long time, Webb allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. Humanity had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, and as long as there were men and women like Webb and Reeves, like the brave soldiers and civilians who had given their lives to defend their species, that light would never be extinguished. The Cardassians had been defeated, but the war for the future, the war for the very soul of the galaxy, was only just beginning. Webb stared at the pulsating energy masses, a chill running down his spine. The implications of this discovery were staggering. If there were more of these dormant overlords scattered throughout the galaxy, the threat they posed was beyond calculation. He turned to Reeves, his face grim. "We need to bring this to the Alliance leadership. They need to know what we're up against." Reeves nodded, his eyes still fixed on the eerie glow of the energy masses. "But what do we tell them? That the war they thought was won is just the beginning? That there could be dozens, maybe hundreds of these things out there, just waiting to wake up?" Webb's eyes hardened. "We tell them the truth, and then we figure out what to do about it." The journey back to Earth was tense, the weight of their discovery hanging heavy in the air. When they finally stood before the Alliance Council, the room was deathly silent as Webb and Reeves laid out their findings. Admiral Grayson leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "If what you're saying is true, this changes everything. We can't risk this information getting out. It could cause mass panic, destabilize the peace we've worked so hard to achieve." But Councillor Tariq shook her head. We can't keep this a secret. The other species of the galaxy have a right to know the threat they face. We need to work together if we're going to have any chance of stopping these overlords. The debate raged for hours, voices rising and falling as each councillor made their case. Webb and Reeves waited, the tension mounting with each passing minute. Finally, Grayson held up a hand. We've made a decision. We will share this information, but only with a select few, species we know we can trust, who have proven themselves as allies. Together, we will form a covert coalition to monitor and contain this threat. He turned to Webb and Reeves. Captain Webb, Dr. Reeves, you have more experience with the Cardassians and the Overlords than anyone. We want you to lead this coalition. Webb's heart skipped a beat. The responsibility was immense, the stakes higher than anything he had ever faced, but he knew he couldn't refuse. The fate of humanity and all alien species was at stake. As they left the council chambers, Reeves put a hand on Webb's shoulder. You sure about this, Logan? It's a hell of a burden to take on. Webb nodded, his eyes hard. We don't have a choice, Ethan. If we don't do this, who will? The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity, as Webb and Reeves assembled their team and prepared for their mission. They handpicked operatives from a dozen different species, each bringing their own unique skills and knowledge to the table. But even as they worked, Webb couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The Overlord they had defeated was just one of many. Who knew what other horrors lurked out there in the darkness of space? And then there were the Cardassians. Though their empire had crumbled, Webb knew they were not extinct. There were still pockets of resistance scattered throughout the galaxy, remnants of their once mighty civilization clinging to life in the shadows. Now, armed with the knowledge of the Overlords, they could become an even greater threat than before. The thought sent a shiver down Webb's spine. The day finally came when Webb stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Resilience. It was a sleek, powerful vessel, equipped with the latest in human and alien technology. As the crew busied themselves with final preparations, Webb stared out the viewport at the vast expanse of stars. Somewhere out there, the Overlords waited, and the Cardassians, and who knew what other threats they had yet to discover. Reeves came to stand beside him, his face somber. You ready for this, Logan? Webb took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. He turned to the helmsman, a young Andorian named Thrace. Set course for the Orion sector, we have work to do. As the ship jumped into hyperspace, the stars blurring into streaks of light, Webb felt a weight settle on his shoulders. The war may have been won, but the fight for survival was not nearly finished. He couldn't help but wonder if humanity, in its quest for dominance, had finally bitten off more than it could chew. The Overlords were an enemy unlike any they had ever faced before, a threat that had endured for millennia. Could they really hope to stand against such a foe? Or were they doomed to fall, just as countless civilizations had before them? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. Webb would fight to his last breath to protect his species, to safeguard the fragile peace they had won. No matter the cost, no matter the odds, he would not let the Overlords win. He would not let the Cardassians rise again. The Resilience hurtled through the void, carrying with it the hopes and fears of a galaxy. And on its bridge, Captain Logan Webb stood tall, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The unknown stretched out before them, vast and terrifying, but they would face it together, united in their perseverance to survive, to prevail. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.